All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody listening. My name is Mike Whitmire. I'm the co-founder and CEO of FloWcast, an active CPA. Very excited for today's episode of Blood, Sweat, and Balance Sheets, the podcast where accountants interview executives, entrepreneurs from a variety of fields to try to learn more about business and help progress our careers and our knowledge. I'm very excited for today. A long-term friend of mine and now an investor in my company FloQast, Sean Jacobsohn. So, Sean, welcome to the podcast. You want to introduce yourself here?
Well, Mike, thanks for inviting me. Super excited to be on the podcast. It's kind of fun. I've got the Giants background and you've got the Dodgers background. I'm in an empty locker room here because the Giants should have played the Dodgers in the playoffs. They all they need to do is win one of their last 3 games, and they couldn't pull it off. So I get a chance to hang out here for the next several months.
I think you were telling me the stat. That would be the first time they were both in the playoffs at the same time, which is kind of shocking to me.
First time they would have played each other in the playoffs, which is amazing. Yeah, that would have been cool. But maybe next year. This is a common thing for me, right? I'm in LA. I'm always talking to Bay Area people. I have this Giants Dodgers thing. It's tough, but I can't not support my guys. Yeah. But you're asking about my background. Most of my career has been as an operator. Mike and I overlapped at Cornerstone. I was also at WageWorks and Upwork, and I've always been on the go-to-market side. And throughout my career, I was a angel investor and advisor and really enjoyed the startup world. And I was kind of like a VC as a hobby on the side. And, became a VC 8 years ago. I'm at Norwest Venture Partners. We're the second oldest venture firm in the country, 58 years old, and really excited to be an investor in FloQast. I've had a chance to, follow Mike throughout his career, and finally we're working together again. We invested in the Series C, led the Series C in January.
Yeah, and for some further context, the joke I like to make is Sean's job at Cornerstone was much cooler than mine. I was, booking deferred revenue journal entries. I was a senior accountant. You were there forging ahead with new partnerships and trying to build the business. So want to talk about it. Could you just go over like a couple, maybe the top partnership you signed at Cornerstone and just dig into how that happened a little bit more?
The focus at Cornerstone was really to find distribution partners where our direct sales force wasn't paying attention. So SMB, Asia Pacific, Latin America, certain verticals like healthcare, public sector, and then also find partners that could help accelerate what our direct sales force was doing, where they could collaborate in the field. One partner I thought could be a real big needle mover for us was ADP. So they're selling into all the same types of accounts we were selling into, but with thousands of salespeople on the street. And our competitors were public companies with a lot more salespeople than we had. So if we could, get some sort of relationship with ADP, it could really give us some nonlinear growth. So the way I approached that one was initially as a referral partner. So ADP had a recruiting product, and we had performance and learning product. And so a lot of our customers were looking for recruiting. A lot of their customers were looking for performance and learning. And so the way I got ADP to pay attention to us is just we started sending them recruiting business. And, that's the way I find for smaller companies to get attention of the larger companies.
Right.
That you start sending them business instead of the reverse. And at some point in time, they get so excited about all that business that the opportunity inflects, because then they can obviously make a much bigger impact on our business than vice versa. And that referral relationship ended up turning into a reseller arrangement where ADP was reselling Cornerstone's product, and it was ADP's product powered by Cornerstone. And that was one thing that accelerated us toward becoming a public company.
Yeah, and I can tell you, I was booking the revenue on the ADP deals. The way it was structured was a little different, but yeah, there was a lot of business coming in through that channel. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, they'll see the press release, Cornerstone partners with ADP, that goes out, but there's a lot of work that goes into getting to a point where you do want to sign something and do a formal press release. So you said you started as a referral relationship. Was it informal, like no contract signed, and you just started sending them leads to get their attention?
Yeah, that's how it started. Actually, there was no contract. I find that contracts are useful, but it doesn't necessarily lead to success.
Mhm.
So it initially started as informal, just sending the business. And then they started sending us business after several months of just it being one way. And then they realized how we really need to have the Cornerstone products in our bag to help us compete against some of our biggest competitors. We have a gap in our offering. And so we need to at least be on parity with some of our competitors and compete in other areas of the business. So, we can go head to head against a Ceridian on payroll, and we're not going to lose because we don't have a performance and learning in our bag.
Okay, so yeah, I mean the two-way benefit there, it becomes a no-brainer at some point. And I can, our best equivalent at Flowcast is Workiva, and public company way bigger than us. So we had to do the same thing. We just started throwing them leads until they couldn't ignore us anymore. And then it's such a great joint sale. It's a lesson I learned from Ken, our CRO, right, who you've known for a while here. Win it in the field, and then you win enough in the field, and then it gets up to the executive team, and then contracts get signed and partnerships are formalized. And here we are. We won Workiva Partner of the Year last week, so it's worked out really well with that strategy. Definitely recommend it.
Yeah, Ken is someone I've also known for a long time, and one other reason why it's special to work with you, Mike, is also special to work with people like Ken, who were part of the Norwest portfolio previously. He was CRO at one of our portfolio companies, Case. And he also agrees with that strategy. As you've seen with Workiva, and we talked about ADP, one big reason to Case's success was they started sending business to Dell.
Yep.
And eventually, that partnership inflected the reverse, and Dell didn't want to give up those referrals, and then they started sending Case business, and that relationship worked out so well that Dell ended up acquiring Case down the road.
Yeah, that's so. Man, I've heard that story. You don't even know how many times, and it's he always uses that as the example, and it's the right one. So I actually we were going to talk about this a little bit later, but let's just chat about it now, since you kind of mentioned that part of why you like Flowcast is the familiarity with Ken, and he's worked with Norwest before. So when you're looking at potential investments, like what types of things are important to you, and particularly what do you like about Flowcast? Like, why were you so excited to lead our C round?
Well, I think that the reason that I was excited to invest in Flowcast is similar to the reason I invest in some other companies here at Norwest. And I think founder market fit is essentially important. And you were living and breathing this problem at Cornerstone and prior to Cornerstone, and this was a problem that you wanted to solve, and you thought you were best suited to solve it, which I agree. and also it happens to be a huge market opportunity, not only for the initial product, but you've been coming out with several other modules and have many more that are in mind. And so the other thing is you've got very little competition, and there's one company that's helped evangelize the market, and they're a disruptible 20-year-old competitor.
Mm-hmm.
And you have very little competition in the mid-market, and there's some disruptible opportunity in the enterprise. And so, there's a lot of room to run here.
Makes a ton of sense. And I think, when you look at also the team, so let's chat a little bit more. The CEO of that company, Case, that Sean was referring to, a guy named Rob Meinhardt, one of our first investors. He's an independent board member and is actually an advisor for us, works with us a couple of days a week. So when you looked at the team, how much did that matter to the rest of the partners? I'm curious, the meetings that were behind the scenes, where I wasn't there and you guys were talking about us, like how impactful were they on the decision to make the investment?
Well, I think the team is a big reflection on you, Mike. I see you as becoming a CEO of a public company, and in order to get there, you need to surround yourself with strong talent. And you've attracted strong talent that's close to our network, the Norwest network, as well as people outside of the close network. And you've been mentored by some very successful CEOs. A couple of them that are on the board right now.
Yep.
So That's critically important. I mean, you're important, but the entire team's important. You need a world-class talent to build a successful public company here.
Yeah, people. So another thing maybe the audience doesn't understand is, behind Elon Musk is a lot of unbelievable talent that is pushing that business forward and actually doing all the stuff that Elon, spouts out about. So the hiring is just so important. Arguably, I mean, is this fair to say the most important part of scaling a business? The ability to hire, right?
It's critically important. And one thing I'm impressed about Flowcast is you've got a really strong team in the middle management layer. I mean, it was really exciting. In the last board meeting, you had a lot of the mid-level management present to the board. Super impressive.
Yeah. The hiring out of the director level, I'm thrilled with the directors we have, and the importance of them for driving the business. It was like, it was VPs, and then as you add more, all of a sudden the directors are the ones quite literally directing and getting everything done, and everyone's able to, above that, think more high level. And I was very proud of that board meeting, watching the team go. I thought they did an amazing job presenting. So now you went from a world where you're helping run operate a business. You're there day to day. You're seeing what's going on at Cornerstone all the time. You have a pulse on the company. Now you move over to the VC world and you're at board meetings, you have less frequent calls, you're maybe not in the weeds as much. Like, what has the transition from operator to investor been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I love being an investor. It's an amazing job to have a chance to be part of many at the same time. But the teams are more outside my company than inside my company. I'm used to, an operating role. Pre-COVID, you would be in the office almost every day, spending time with the team, focused on, one set of customers, one set of problems. And now I'm kind of spread across, a lot of companies, and it's exciting to solve a lot of different problems at the same time. But I can only really be a mentor, a coach, advisor. I can't actually execute on some of the opportunities. So the most important thing is having really strong teams to work with. Mm-hmm. And it's a very lucky job that I have, but it's also not an easy job.
No, it's not, and I've found like partners with an operating background. So we have quite a few on our board, and it's a different type of advice you get from a kind of a career investor versus someone who was an operator and moved over into VC land. There's just a deeper understanding of the day-to-day stuff that happens. Like, I remember having a couple drinks with one of our with sort of a non-operating investor, and I was talking about all the stuff we had going on that I had to deal with tomorrow. It's like, I got this number, I have this call to the board, we have this HR issue, I have to deal with this, we have this from a security, and it was just like, 8 different things. And the look on his face was like, whoa, I didn't know you had that much stuff going on. And it's like, yeah, there's a lot of nuance to running a company. And when I speak to someone like you, or like Gary Schwartz, or like Rob Meinhardt, you've been there, you've had difficult conversations, you have very actionable advice for helping out with any given situation. So, long way of saying I appreciate your operating background. For me, it's been super helpful. And now another one I'm curious on, you said you kind of became an investor sort of on the side. You were doing a VC job and then formalized it. You seem like a guy who knows what you want to do and has a good vision for your career and what you want to make happen. Like, did you not always want to be a VC? I just kind of assumed that was your goal since, call it, when you decided to get your MBA.
I mean, it's a good question. I mean, it was always something I thought I'd be good at and I enjoyed doing, but I also enjoyed building companies. But more and more over time, I got more involved in angel investing and advising companies. And I had a very prepared mind if someone came to me, approaching me with an opportunity to be a VC, but I wasn't proactively interviewing for it. It just kind of was asked of me.
Okay.
I was an executive at Emergence Capital's portfolio company. You send it?
Yeah.
And they asked me if I would leave their portfolio company to become an investor. So that's kind of how it happened.
Okay.
And I had been referring a lot of deals to Emergence throughout the years. And then I also was referring a lot of deals to Norwest. Those are the two firms I knew the best. And Norwest approached me with an opportunity to come to them, and it was not easy to leave Emergence. It's an amazing firm, right. But I had an opportunity to be the first one at Norwest that was exclusively focused on business applications and could invest at any stage. Emergence focuses mostly on Series A and B. At Norwest, we can do seed, A, B, C, D, in any stage. And so it was really hard to pass that up, especially since I knew that team well too.
I didn't realize that you were sort of the driving force in expanding more into the software space. Like, because Norwest has an interesting portfolio. You guys span all kinds of industries. I remember leaving the full partner pitch. We were getting in the elevator, and getting out of the elevator was what looked like some 20-year-old kids holding some like weather vane looking application. And I was like, man, they're going to save the world. We're helping companies close the books faster. That's great. But those kids are going to save the world. And I found it interesting that you guys were, they were pitching Norwest because that's so outside of like closed management software and what we do. So would you say that, you got in there, you helped build it up? Like, are other partners more interested in technology, or have you guys stayed pretty horizontal with the types of companies you look at?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we have a diversified strategy. I'm on the enterprise team, so we've always invested in business applications, but it's never been what someone exclusively did till I joined. And since then, we hired Scott Biechuk from Salesforce is also doing that.
Yeah.
But our enterprise team was doing business applications, but also a lot of security and infrastructure investing. We also have a consumer team.
Okay.
Similar number of partners on the consumer team as the enterprise team. We have a healthcare team. All three of the partners there were former doctors, became VCs. And we have a
nice. That's quite the career path there. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of them is still a doctor, 3 shifts a month. So we actually can test out technology in the hospital before he invests in the company, which is pretty
yeah, what an advantage. That's super. So he's a practitioner. Oh, this new thing came by my desk. Maybe we should take a look at investing.
He can bring it into the hospital, or he can find out about new technologies people are looking at. So he's on the forefront. And then we have a private equity team, which we call growth equity, and they buy significant stakes or controlling interest in bootstrapped companies that have never raised venture funding before, that are profitable. They invest mostly in North America, but they've invested outside the country as well. We just did an investment in Europe. And then we have a team in Israel and India. So we're diversified across stages, sectors, and geographies.
Yeah, Norwest is an awesome firm, and you guys have raised so much money to deploy. You can kind of think this way. How many partners are there?
We have 19 partners globally, and we raised a $2 billion fund in Q4. So it's not a bad time to have raised a fund. You have some venture firms that have slowed down investing post-COVID, and others are having difficulty raising new funds. So we're in a perfect position.
Yeah, you guys did good timing on it, and I think a lot of dry powder, as they call it out there, to put to use. So one of the things you're helping me with is recruiting talent, like to go back to that. And we are currently hiring for a head of marketing and also for a COO. If you look at our stage, like we're hopefully a couple years out from an IPO. That's what we're thinking right now. I don't want to say the revenue number on the podcast, but we're hopefully a couple of years out from an IPO. What type of what should I be looking for now in an executive that I'm hiring? Is it has to be IPO experience, or just how do you think about this type of hire at this stage of company?
I don't think a person necessarily has to have IPO experience. I mean, there's a lot of companies that get to significant scale that stay as private companies. Mm-hmm. But I think you want someone that, you could see in the seat 4 or 5 years from now. If you look at, where the company is going to be in 4 or 5 years, how big the company is going to be. Ideally, that person could scale to that level, but also has had the experience at your stage. I mean, there's some people that are only interested in companies that are public, and I think you can screen those people out.
Yeah, we can filter them out very quickly. Mm-hmm.
But chemistry with the rest of the team is critically important, and passion for the problem you're solving, passion for the market. They don't need to have domain experience. There's plenty of domain experience around the table. They can learn it pretty quickly. But you have a very special company. You have the ability to hire the best athlete that can scale with the company. And so you have an ability to keep the bar really high.
That point about somebody who's excited about the company is really, really important. I just want to double down on that. It's been fascinating recruiting for the CMO because for really experienced people, maybe they've marketed to only IT people so far. And the idea of marketing to an accountant is a new, different, scary thing, maybe not the coolest market they're thinking out there. And I realize in the hiring, it's, if that's the mentality, I don't want to twist your arm at all. That's fine. Go continue to market to IT people. I want someone who's excited about our opportunity because I think it's very special. And that's been a twist for me personally recently is, I used to think it's okay, pushing hard to try to recruit people, you convince them, but you actually know that's not worth it. Somebody should be excited about what you're doing. They're going to come in with self-motivation. It's how you find a good partner and someone who's going to be in it for the long haul, through tough times, right? They got to be excited about the company and what you're doing to stick it out through that inevitable tough quarter or 2 quarters that we're going to have at some point in the next 4 years.
Yeah. And I believe, like I said, this is a 4 or 5 year hire. It could be longer, hopefully.
Yeah.
And you have the ability to be patient here. I wouldn't jump at, the first, good candidate. You've got to think that this is someone you want to work with, for quite a long time. And they have to be self-motivated, self-excited to join the company. You can't convince them yourself.
And so we had a long debate between a CMO and a VP of marketing. I'm curious from your perspective, what do you think the difference between a C-level and a VP is? What's the skill set or the mentality maybe that sets those apart?
I think people treat titles very differently. At Cornerstone, for instance, we mostly called people VPs. And, we didn't really use C-level titles until after the company was public. Okay. So I think, I don't think there's necessarily a difference. It may just be a way of people feeling comfortable with peers at the company. If someone has a VP title, do you feel like, they're a peer or do you think you should have the, C-level title? I don't know if it really matters as much. Depends on how the company thinks about titles.
I guess it really depends on, are they running the department or not? Title kind of could, if you're a CMO and there's a VP of marketing, there's a distinction there. But if you're running the marketing department, you're running the marketing department and right. Title's just a title. Is that
right? Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking back to Cornerstone. I think the CTO was the first C-level hire they made. Yep. I'm remembering because Adam and Perry started it. And then, Mark was hired it seemed like maybe 6 or 8 months ahead of the IPO.
Right. And then they gave some VPs C-level titles down the road, but they didn't start with it.
Right. Okay. Nice. And one other topic, kind of definitely reverting course here, but you got your MBA, so it's school right outside of Boston, right? Don't need to talk about that too much, but I'm curious, the MBA, it's something that a lot of accountants think they might want to do, don't quite understand what occurs there. Could you give us a quick just summary of what getting your MBA was like, what value you thought you got out of it, and if you could do it again, would you do it again, and has it impacted your career?
Well, it's a good question because, I haven't really thought about it much until you brought this up. But we would not be sitting here right now if I didn't get my MBA. And, the reason is I was in real estate prior to my MBA.
I didn't know about this. All right, tell me more.
I was in commercial real estate. And if I didn't get my MBA, I might still be in real estate right now in Chicago.
Not a good time to be in commercial real estate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed it, but I knew I wanted to get my MBA for a variety of reasons, and one of the reasons was it gives you 2 years to think about what you might want to do for your career long term. You get a chance to learn from people in all different industries, all different geographies. You can, do class projects. You can do random internships. And so if I think about some of the fun things I did, being a sports guy, I did an internship for the CFO of Major League Baseball.
Oh, that's awesome.
I did a 1-year field study for the president of the NFL, who is an HBS grad. So I just reached out to him and said, hey, we have 4 students that want to do a class project for you. And we got a chance to meet, several owners of the different NFL teams. And they sent us to the Super Bowl, and it was pretty amazing experience. I also did a class project with a student who owned his own brewery prior to business school. And we were concocting green tea beer.
Huh.
It didn't take off, but there's unique health benefits to it. It was a cool idea. Never really made it. But when I was at school, I got really excited about the technology industry. I had brought in a lot of technology entrepreneurs because I ran the entrepreneurship club at business school. And after business school, I said, hey, I want to join a software company. And I decided to join the B2B world rather than the B2C world. It was kind of a fork in the road decision. A lot of people were going after B2C, but I realized I'm not as good at predicting what consumers will want, not only today, but down the road, because, consumers are very fickle, and how do you market to them? How do you create a defensible moat? But I understand if you sell a product to businesses and solve their problem really well, that not only will they stick with you, but they'll buy more over time. So that was what I had passion for. And I ended up joining Elance, which is now known as Upwork. There were 15, a 2-bedroom apartment in New York. We hadn't raised any venture funding yet. And the company soon after that raised a round, and that's how the company moved from New York to the Bay Area. And so that started my path of being, a software guy. So I joined there, prior to the Series A. I was in business development and sales. So initially focused, so Elance, and Upwork today is like an eBay for services, a marketplace for services. We also then got into being like an Ariba for services. So we also created a software product. So I was focused on business development, driving business buyers to our site. And then we got in the software business, and I moved over into a sales role selling to Fortune 500 companies. We eventually realized, wow, we've got 2 successful businesses, but we can't do both at the same time. So we ended up selling the software business and using that money to fuel more of the marketplace business. And it was almost like another round of funding. One of the executives left to go to WageWorks, where I went. I joined to run their mid-market sales team and half the country's enterprise sales team. And then we realized we could get some real inflection through doing partnerships. And so I ended up starting and running the business development function. And that's how I evolved into business development. I joined the company at the Series A round. It eventually went public. Similar to Upwork, it was a long journey to get there. Upwork took 20 years to go public. WageWorks took 15 years to go public. And WageWorks is in the employee benefits space. And then I moved to Cornerstone On Demand, where obviously we overlapped. And they said, hey, what you did at WageWorks, we want to do a Cornerstone. We've been selling to direct sales, through direct sales only, and we're not going to hire as big of a sales team as some of our competitors. We need to get some inflection through partnerships. Could you do the same thing you did at WageWorks? And, the fundraising market was not the same back then as it is today. Incredibly, right. Cornerstone only raised $30 million of equity before we went public. Nowadays, there's a lot of Series A companies that raised $30 million. And we're talking about the entire life of the company before it went public. They only raised $30 million of equity.
It's unbelievable. We've raised 93. I don't know how, Adam, it's super impressive that they went public on 30 million. And, I don't know if they totally need it. Certainly helped, but yeah, they did a lot of damage on very little capital.
I mean, the company bootstrapped themselves for 7 years. So they learned some really good fiscal discipline and kept that even after they raised the money.
Yeah. And I think they would have been around maybe like 15 or 20 million recurring revenue when you joined. And then we quickly, it
was 7 million when I joined. The company went public around 60 million of ARR. So nowadays companies don't go public on 60 million of ARR because they can raise so much more and take the company much further. But back then, that was the a great liquidity event. Incredibly, they raised their last private round was 2 years before the IPO, and the investors that invested in that round at the IPO price, the company's worth 10 times the price at the IPO price, and then it went up 5x after that. But
Wow.
What an incredible investment for them.
Yeah, and that was Bessemer, I believe. Nail that. Oh, Meritech. Okay, got
Meritech.
it.
Bessemer led the round before. I mean, Bessemer did incredibly well as well, but Meritech, 2 years and 2 months after their investment, we were public. It was an incredible investment for them.
That's well done by them. Yeah. Well, I the consumer versus B2B. That's I think for what it's worth, I think you made an excellent decision at that fork in the road. It's funny. I'll never forget our CTO and co-founder Cullen. He came out of MySpace. I don't know if I've told you this story, but he came out of MySpace. And so when I met him, I was having a hard time in LA finding an engineer who wanted to work on a B2B company because it's Los Angeles. Like people just aren't into that. And he goes, yeah, I just came out of MySpace. Like we went from talking trash about Facebook to them laying off floors and floors of engineers at the same time. And I want nothing to do with consumers. So I want all B2B. I was like, this is the kind of guy I need right here. Perfect. And yeah, I love it. He goes, people pay us for our software every year. I was like, yeah, that's how it's going to work. And that right there, recurring revenue is a beautiful thing for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. When I moved from the Bay Area to LA for Cornerstone, and one of the things that I was worried about was I was going to a market that's mostly a consumer market. And the people that I'm meeting in the industry locally don't really understand what I'm doing. That has since changed dramatically. I mean, it's, what was happening is some of the best talent in LA was moving to the Bay Area that wanted to be in software because that's where the companies were. But then people started saying, hey, well, why don't I just start a company in LA? And there's actually a lot of really amazing companies at scale in LA in the B2B world. And there's more people graduating with engineering degrees in Southern California than anywhere else in the country.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that a lot of those people don't have to leave. They can stay local.
Yeah, something that's very misunderstood between UCLA, USC, you got Caltech. They're great engineering programs in Southern California. And I feel like Cornerstone was just a flagship company for LA, right? Like them, Adam founding that company, going public, it's created so many great executives in LA that we can scale the hiring and just people have been there and it's helped seed other companies. Yeah, LA has this like shockingly good, very nerdy B2B SaaS scene. I mean, it's nerdy stuff. Like what we do isn't the coolest. What Cornerstone did isn't the coolest, but hey, people pay you for it. You're solving a pain point and you can build a great company.
I agree.
Right?
Yep. I hope my next investment's in LA.
me too. Well, I've really enjoyed the conversation. I don't know if you have any parting thoughts for the audience. It's so we're talking about accountants trying to learn about venture capital a little bit here. So any parting words of wisdom for them before we head out?
The one thing that comes to mind is, in my operating days, I was focused on go-to-market. I was focused just on revenue and drive as much revenue as possible. I didn't really have as much an appreciation for accounting. And being a VC, I have developed a really strong appreciation for accounting and how important it is.
And why is that? What do you appreciate about it?
I appreciate the fact that if you don't do it right, it can really cripple a company, and it's so mission critical. Yeah, it's been great to see that. I've noticed over the last 5 years, VCs in general are like really wanting to get their company's books closed in order the closing process in order way sooner than they did historically. And I'm glad we're getting a little bit of love in the VC world there. Well, let's wrap it on that. Sean, I really appreciate you taking the time. I look forward to our next board meeting. I think it's going to be a very good one. I'm super excited. Thanks, Mike, for having me. All right. Have a great rest of your day, Sean. You too. Bye.